Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman. And today I'm delighted to have with us Wes Wheless, who's an Umbrex member. And he's also runs a firm called Develop My IP, which offers two services to solo consultants. We're going to talk about both. The first service is called NicheFinder, and the second one is called IP Builder. They're nicely packaged services. Wes, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Well, it's glad to be here.
All right. So, why don't you give us sort of the 1 minute version on both Niche Finder and IP Builder, these two kind of service lines that your firm offers?
Yeah, so let me start with I'm a solo consultant for solo consultant, and so I'm very deep in the matrix of this world. To put a big umbrella over both of those sprints, it's I help solo consultants bottle their secret sauce. We all come in with different experience, coming in from different angles, from burnout to layoff, et cetera. But I think we all come in with a lot of questions about how we turn our corporate experience into a sustainable consulting practice. So what I found is that there's two main foundations that a consultant needs to figure out. One is you need a niche, a specialization, and the other one is you need a unique approach to serving that niche, and typically codified into some sort of intellectual property. So that's how I set up my services. I work one-on-one with soloists. It's on a sprint model. The niche finder is a 1 week sprint with about a month follow on, and that's to help identify a viable lane that leverages your talents. And then the IP builder is about how to pull out some unique points of view and put those into visual assets that I kind of cheekily called intellectual headshots.
Intellectual headshots. Okay, cool. So I think we're going to spend a bit more time on the IP Builder offering, but why don't you spend a few more minutes explain to us the niche finder? Someone, talk to us about what that program looks like. If someone works with you, how long does it take? What are the activities that you do that they do? How often do you meet? What do they get at the end of it? Talk to us about niche finder.
Sure. Yeah. So niche finder is for people that are a bit early in their solo consulting journey. Typically, they're trying to answer the question, what can I sell? And so when it comes to picking a niche, either they don't have any idea how their expertise meets the market, or they have too many ideas about how their expertise meets the market, and they're having a hard time narrowing that down. And so the idea is to work one-on-one together to try to find that midpoint where you can narrow your reach down to one specific ICP or ideal client profile, and start to gain traction by focusing your energy. It's a 1 week sprint. It's really fast by design. It's 3 sessions over that 1 week. And the way to think about it is it's kind of looking backward, looking inward, and looking outward. So I give you a pre-sprint worksheet that helps kind of jog your memory about things that really activate you. It's a longer questionnaire than I can go into right now. But you do that before the sprint. Then session one is all about getting into really identifying what's referred to as your zone of genius, your genius zone, if you're familiar with that framework. Kind of what really activates you, where do you deliver exceptional value, all of that kind of agnostic to a specific context. So once we find that genius zone, then we go into session two, which is about laying out a few potential ICPs. So you and I would come up with 3 specific ICPs, and that's being very specific about a buyer, an urgent problem, and the transformation that you spending time in your genius zone could help resolve. So we get to 3 ICPs together that we feel pretty good about, and then between sessions 2 and 3, I run it through a custom GPT that I've created that will run a pretty detailed viability analysis on each of those lanes. And in fact, it will also come up with 3 additional ICPs that me and the client have not come up with. So it kind of provides that check as well. So then in session 3, we look through that analysis, we start eliminating lanes, and then hopefully turn into one with maybe a second as a backup lane that the client can then go validate with conversations in the market.
Give us some examples of these lanes. So what would like the final, an example, you can sanitize it or give a real example. of the end of this process?
Sure. So maybe one easy example. I won't go into too much detail. Maybe I can share a second one. But the first one is I do get fractional executives coming to me. So we can think about a potentially a fractional CMO who has experience with brand marketing. So we start thinking about, okay, well, which types of verticals might need specific attention based on this particular client's expertise within brand marketing. So that when I'm working with fractionals, it can mostly look like applying that to different verticals, and then the analysis will point out, pros and cons of those particular verticals. Maybe a more interesting example is I
But
just finished.
what
Oh,
would be a fully articulated niche look like? Like I'm a fractional CMO that does brand marketing for direct to consumer in the men's shaving industry with companies under 100 million. Is it something like that? Or like what is it? Like what would an example be?
yeah, it's pretty close. And actually, what you just made up off the top of your head is quite close to the client that I was talking about. He's a fractional CMO for B2C subscription companies that had hit a growth plateau and had not invested in brand marketing.
Okay. Oh, okay. And it had not invested in brand marketing. Okay.
Not yet. Yeah. In that case, it was they had invested in a lot of performance marketing. You see a plateau with the subscription company. And my client's view was your way out of that is even though it seems long term, you need to focus on brand marketing, and I can show how the return would look on that.
Hmm. Okay. All right. What would another couple examples be? I think this helps understand for a bottoms up thinker like me what it is you're doing. So, like, what would be two or three other examples be for something who's maybe not a fractional, but more of a consultant?
Yeah, so I just finished one last week with a woman who she actually came from another kind of boutique consulting firm that was all about change management. Turns out her genius zone was really about being that translation layer between strategic vision and then actual operations on the ground and culture on the ground. So she was that middle layer, which I think this is a good example because she had a really keen, like her genius zone was being like really understanding like the what was happening on the ground and being able to bubble that up and then also like not bubble down. I don't know what the word is there, but deliver the strategic down to the different layers. That is a place where that skill set could be used in a lot of different places. And so we came up with some ICPs such as, um, while she had been talking to a private equity firm, for example, that they were looking to install a new process and technology, even internally, not even at their portcos, but we're hitting some internal resistance, so they needed someone. So we thought about those kinds of internal issues. She also had some success in helping new executives acclimate to being in charge of a new team. So that was an ICP that we could be looking at. So like that gives some examples of the ones that we created. As we ran that through the analysis, the GPT actually suggested one that, by the way, the GPT is loaded up with the context of her worksheet and our conversations and all of that. And so the GPT analysis said, well, why don't you think about innovation teams that are running pilots, but then don't get any traction because the rest of the organization doesn't understand what the innovation team has created.
Mm.
That one really sparked a light in her, and she said, "Okay, I think that's the one I want to go after." Um, so yeah, those are just some examples of how that niche finder can illuminate some things that might not be obvious right at the beginning.
Hmm. Okay. And how do you factor into those the relationships that the person already has, like with potential buyers? Is that like a key consideration, or are you focusing more on the kind of work that they've done in the past and what makes them come alive and what they enjoy doing and what they're good at, and sort of drawing from that? Or is it more like, here's the people I know who might hire me?
Yeah. Yeah, it's all taken into account. I mean, I think what you're suggesting is the sequencing. I like to start with, what really activates you because I think as solo consultants, we have a really unique opportunity to only sell work that keeps us in that really highly productive zone. And so let's identify what that is and then go find applications of it. But to your point about your network and access, that is taken into account. One is we're thinking about the ICPs that we're generating, but also I talked about the, I don't remember if I said that there's 12 viability factors in the GPT analysis. One of them, the first one that pops up actually, is about access, and that's where it will give both across all the viability factors. It will give a qualitative analysis and a quantitative scoring of, for access, for example, how easy it's going to be for this consultant to actually make inroads into this particular lane. So access is one of the factors. I won't list all 12 now, but it's things like, yeah, access, lifetime value, competitive alternatives. Um, I even have a place where you can put in your target revenue number and it can give an assessment of whether or not that the market is big enough for you to support that.
Mhm.
Length of sales cycle, like those kinds of things are all taken into account. So what you have at the end of it is quite a honestly a bit dense report, but also it's meant to start to poke holes and uncover red flags, because the whole point of the exercise is to narrow down your options into something that is viable.
Mm. Okay. All right. Um, Great. And then, uh, yeah, I mean, the reason I asked the question is like some people will come to me and I'm not doing this as a service, right? But some people will like pick my brain and they'll say, "Oh, there's all these different things that I'm able to do, right? I've done lots of things. I was at McKinsey or Deloitte for 6 years. I did all these different types of projects. Um, and I've been an independent for 2 years or 3 years. I've done a bunch of kinds of projects. And I can do strategy, I can do operations, I can do, transformation projects, and great. And they're trying to figure it out. Um, so one path of doing this is to say, okay, that's great that you want to do all those things, but why don't we let's start with the people who, not the people who but the people who know you, right? The people who
Mhm.
know you, like you, trust you, and let's look for decision makers who personally could sign a statement of work, or for influencers, and I'm taking this from David A. Fields, who influencers who could introduce you to that decision maker. Maybe an influencer might be a strategy manager or director of strategy who can introduce you to the VP of strategy. And so map those people, because 85% of the time in the first 2 years as an independent consultant, you can promote yourself, but most likely your buyers are going to be people who already know you, like you, and trust you, right?
Yep.
Um, except unless you go through a staffing firm. But if you go through a staffing firm, that's one thing. But if you're selling work directly, it's people who know you, like you, and trust you. Later on, you might get a reputation and get referrals, or people find your content on LinkedIn or whatever. But most of the time, first couple of years, it's your existing network. So start with your existing network, find out, identify them, list them out, and then figure out, okay, those are my potential universe of buyers, at least 85%. What are they buying? And what service can I offer that they are willing to pay for? Because, yeah, I might love to do innovation work, whatever. But if you spent the last 6 years doing procurement projects and you have a ton of chief procurement officers, maybe you're more likely to get work doing strategic sourcing transformations, right? Rather than
Mhm.
kind of innovation project, which you'd really like to do, which would make you come alive. So
Yep.
I don't know, what's your reaction to that kind of alternate approach of more starting with the lens of, just who is your potential buyers from the universe of people who know you?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a great approach as you're first starting out. In fact, when I if people come to me that are just starting out and haven't served a client yet, my advice to them is typically go find your first project and let's talk after that because you learn so much in the first project about uh, how to sell yourself, what people are interested in, what work you didn't like, what work you did like,
Yeah.
what it's like selling into a big company versus a small. Like you learn all that in your first couple engagements. And so I definitely think that that's the way to go. My issue with that approach, and I think that it tends to it can go one of two ways, right? So as you keep taking that approach, it could very neatly and nicely triangulate you into a specialty that might be interesting to you. I think more likely is if you keep relying on let me go work for anyone that will hire me at the moment, then you actually start triangulating in the opposite direction. And I think it starts to push you into places where maybe you don't have much business taking on that kind of work. I know I can speak for myself. Before I started working with solo consultants, I was working with uh, B2B SaaS companies and helping turn their executive insights into content and thought leadership and IP. And my first couple engagements were word of mouth and just like warm inbounds and doing exactly that work that I was very, very good at doing. But then the follow-on work started, and then as a soloist, into my first year, I'm thinking, "Oh, this is great! I don't even have to go sell or anything."
Yeah.
But I noticed that the things that they were asking me to stick around for were definitely not in my genius zone. For example, and this is no dig on the client that was asking me to do this work, but let's say, so I built a course for this B2B company. Then they were going to offer it publicly, and then they asked if I could stick around and TA the course, which I did because it was a nice paycheck, but it's not really the type of work that I was looking to do. And so it actually prompted a lot of conversation, like a lot of thinking and then conversation with a coach of mine who uh, encouraged me to think about what is it that you're exceptionally good at and where are applications of that where you can go make a more decisive lane for yourself as opposed to being reactive about what's coming your way.
Yeah. No, I definitely have a lot of sympathy for that approach. It's also, it's like, if some people phrase it as what seems easy to you that feels like work to other people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or it seems just like fun for you that you do for fun. Um, so okay, so like before we get to the IP builder, so someone comes up, all right, so you work with them, they develop their niche through the NicheFinder program. Once you have that, talk to me a bit about, all right, once you have that, where do you put it? What does it impact? Website, LinkedIn, resume, other things. Talk to me about how the implementation of that, like what do you do with it?
Yeah, I think that there's a step before you even get to that, because the niche finder in itself is kind of insular, right? It's me working with the client, and then we have this GPT analysis that serves as kind of an outsider, but not really. You take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So the next step, and this is why I stick around for another month after the sprint, is that's when you go have market validation conversations. So this is when you're reaching out to first or second degree connections and say, I want to have a non-commercial conversation. I'm just starting out on my own. I'm thinking that I have an idea for a service here, but just want to hear what the pain points are. So you want to like get that in potential clients' words and validate that there's actually a lane here, and also validate that it's still something that you're interested in. So I don't encourage people speeding through that process, but I do think that you can get a pretty good read with 3, 4, 5 conversations. Um, so that should then give you the confidence to say, okay, this is what I want to, I want to plant my flag. Yes, you should go ahead and certainly change your LinkedIn headline. I think that's the first positioning tool that you have. And then I think the trickle effect is then you start changing the content that you post, making sure that that's very specific to the problem that and the transformation that we've identified that you're going to go after. Um, then I would say, and this, I don't know if you meant this as a bridge, but then it goes into, I think you need to start codifying your IP and developing assets that you can share, that people can see, hold, share, talk about, and ultimately book time with you.
Yeah, I guess my order of priority is for that I would recommend to people is probably LinkedIn would be number one. That's the first thing that I think clients go to. And obviously, you mentioned the headline, but it's really the entire profile. So your banner photo, making sure that's consistent, your headline, sure, but then the about section and kind of writing that up. And then each of your experience sections. A lot of people just will say, oh, McKinsey, consultant, telecom practice, or something, right? Okay. So writing up bullets that, or case studies in your LinkedIn profile in the experience section. And then the next immediate small thing is just again on LinkedIn, but having a company page for your practice instead of just going it. If you don't do that by default, it just basically does a LinkedIn search, but having that company page so you can say what your service is again, and then like the immediate collateral, like a resume, having an overview of your firm or your practice. I would probably do that PDF before you do a website because a website is nice, but often you get asked, "Oh, do you have like a some one pager or short two pager on your firm I can share with my colleagues?" So having something like that off the shelf, and then probably having a project list that you can share if asked, and obviously updating your resume because that's almost always the case. Website is kind of last. It's nice to do, but um, I think it's sort of the last thing that clients look at after your PDF and your LinkedIn. Um,
Yeah.
so, um, but let's turn to the IP Builder service line that you have. Talk to me about what is that?
Sure. Yeah. So you have your niche. I like to, before people start the IP builder, I like to say that they should have been serving at least two or three clients within that niche before we go down this route, just so
Okay.
that your points of view and your kind of expertise within the domain has continued to harden and the real current topics are fresh in your mind. Um, I think, you know, taking a step back for a second, if the niche finder is answering the question, what can I sell or what lane do I take? I think the IP builder is really to help with the question of how do I get more leads or how do I close new clients? And there's a lot of different ways that a consultant can do that. I mean, you can go the lead gen route, which I don't really recommend. You could go the cold DM route, which I don't really recommend. I think it's uh, best to, I don't know a path that you can attract clients without displaying your expertise like really prominently. And I think that the easiest way to do that is through visual assets. And so that's what I do with the IP builder is I build out what I call intellectual headshots. These are really kind of instantly digestible visual articulations of your expertise in a way that's memorable and that can prompt conversations. Um, just a bit on the the term intellectual headshots. It's meant to be a little bit silly, but people tend to understand when I mention it that way. Um, but to your point about what clients are looking for, and you talked about company page and LinkedIn and all of that. Um, I think that when I think about actors going out for work and looking for work, they have a headshot and an audition. And between those two things, then a director or a casting person can pretty instantly know whether or not that person is a good fit for a project. Athletes are kind of similar in that vein that you can have tape and stats and a tryout, and then all of a sudden you kind of know that that's the right person that you want. But for consultants, we don't really have anything like that. We have the things that you mentioned, but nothing that's going to like instantly be like, oh yeah, that's our person, that's our consultant. And so that's when I thought, well, why don't we borrow one of those tools and instead of a face headshot, let's think about an intellectual headshot and how can you telegraph your expertise in a very efficient manner. And I think that, writing is one thing, but I think our patience all is quite thin at the moment. And so visuals tend to be a format that you can kind of distribute at scale, but then also not just limit yourself to bringing people in, but those are artifacts and diagrams and frameworks that can lead a sales conversation.
Mhm.
Um, these headshots can look like typical consulting frameworks like two by twos or process flows, though I try to make them a little bit more distinct than that so they don't blend into the background. Some of my more recent clients that I've created these with, we've gotten into some that almost look like a comic strip, or some even have kind of a meme quality, but something that's particularly sticky. So people are seeing their problem and their pain represented visually, perhaps in a visual metaphor, in a
Yeah.
way that opens up a dialogue.
Before we get into the process, did you have something that you wanted to share with me? Share your screen here. I'll give an audio play-by-play of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, definitely. So I have some examples for show and tell. I'll lead with a couple of my own, which will be relevant to your audience because they're they're for solo consultants. But
All
then
right.
I'll share. I got permission to share a couple of client ones as well.
Beautiful.
So let me show you.
Oh, wow. A whole bunch of them. All right.
Yeah. So this one, maybe, Will, do you want to explain
Yeah.
what you're seeing here, and then I'll tell you kind of the backstory behind it?
Sure. Okay. And we will put these on our website. So if you go to umbrex.com/unleashed and look up this episode, we'll include a link in the show notes. We'll have all these, if it's okay with you, Wes, on that page so you can take a look at them. So
For
this
sure.
one I'm seeing, it's it we have some horizontal bars, one, two, three horizontal bars, and there's five categories. So these horizontal bars are kind of connecting either two or three categories. So the title is Consultant Helper Personas by Service Model, and there's five service models. So contractor, fixer, strategist, coach, and advisor. And those, I can see that contractor, fixer. So that would be coming in someone who fixes things, strategist, strategy, coach, and advisor. Yeah, I do see those as slightly distinct. And then there's the yellow bars. The done for you is the contractors and fixers. The do it with you is the fixer, strategist, and coach. And the do it yourself is the coach and advisor. Okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So walk me through, very nice. And the,
Yeah. So I created this one because this is really like last year. I think it was I had a lot of people coming in and saying, I just got laid off. I think I want to explore the solo consulting route, but I'm not really sure what I would do. Kind of the same mindset as people coming in for the niche finder. But I realized that there was a lot of murkiness about, okay, what does it actually mean to be a consultant? And like consultant's a very nebulous term. You can show up in a lot of different ways. So I thought, well, let me just put this out there as a lot of personas that you could actually go out and deploy yourself as, because they are very distinct models and a lot of different levels of involvement and embeddedness. So I put this out there. I write a daily newsletter. I put all my headshots and frameworks out through that.
wow.
The
Okay.
interesting thing, yeah,
Where can,
it's
where can
called the
people sign up for your newsletter?
yeah, well, you can go to my website, developmyip.com. The newsletter is called The Light Bulb. Just look for the light bulb emoji and it'll get you there.
Okay. So
You
that's
can,
developmyip.com. Okay. We'll put that
yeah,
link in the show notes.
yeah, great. So I put this framework out there essentially as a conversation starter. And so that the consultants that were coming in could start to put their minds around like where they are and where they would like to be. So if you're a new consultant, Will, and you saw this for the first time, you probably are immediately like bucketing yourself. You're like, where am I on this spectrum, right? Or where do I want to be? And if then we have this as a shared vocabulary, then in an initial consult, me and the prospect can actually have a much more elevated conversation as opposed to kind of a blanket conversation of, I don't know what I want to do. Here's some language that we can start to frame the conversation around. So that's all this was meant to do. I'll tell you, this is a good example of one that turned out to be very sticky and actually sold me a client without much legwork. This is one that I had a client book a consult. The first thing he said when he got on, he said, I just got back from my honeymoon. Your persona framework stuck in my head, and I feel like I'm stuck at fixer, and I want you to help me to get to advisor. So it just like shows like how what looks like a very simple, simplified image can lead to some really, really productive conversations.
Okay,
Let me give
cool.
you,
Do another one.
yeah. Here's one we kind of talked about already today. Do you want to explain this one,
Yeah, sure.
Will?
Okay,
No.
so here we have more of a line chart with several lines, and we have a horizontal axis of time, increasing time, and client mix on the vertical axis. So we have one line that is for warm network, and that over time, that one starts at zero, but slowly ramps up in terms of the client mix level of client mix. It goes up, but then it kind of plateaus and eventually maybe even declines very gradually, which is probably the case because your warm network eventually gets stale. And then there's another line above that with incremental clients that can increase over time. That's WOM referrals. Oh, word of mouth referrals. Okay, so yeah, you're getting a warm network plus word of mouth referrals. So that goes up over time as you do more work. And then we have a dotted line, a horizontal line at social plateau. So at some point, word of mouth referrals are going to kind of hit an asymptote according to the chart. And if you want additional clients beyond that, you need strangers. So then there's like this incremental above line above that for strangers. And the title is Your Consulting Business Needs Strangers. So here that's what I'm seeing.
Great articulation of it. Yeah, so this is one I put out just to start to think about that exact conversation that you and I were just having about where your clients come from, where they are likely to come from at the beginning, but why that's not a sustainable strategy once you get out over time. I purposely didn't put like a 1 year or 2 year mark on this one because I think it depends on your network and your domain and all of that. But I this is my point of view that over time, if you want a sustainable consulting business, you're going to have to attract strangers. And I actually used this as a lead in for the talk that I gave on building intellectual headshots of saying that you're going to have to find those strangers somehow. What are some tactics and how to do that? What I found with this one was the same kind of identification and stickiness with people who saw it. People, I think it's kind of natural to think, okay, if I'm a new consultant, where are my clients coming from? Where am I on this chart? Am I hitting that plateau? Am I about to? Do I need to be thinking about finding strangers? And so the fact that these are visual, I think it's interesting we're doing this in an audio format because, how long did it take you to describe it? Probably a minute plus.
Yeah.
But this is something that you can look at in 2 or 3 seconds and understand exactly what my point of view is on where consulting clients come from. And then that can lead to a much more elevated conversation when we actually get on the phone.
Right. Yeah, like I have a great face for radio. And uh, so it is a little ironic to describe these visuals in audio format, although of course you can click through and see them. But it certainly allows you to have a conversation and visually making a point. So um, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with the chart because I don't I wouldn't actually agree that word of mouth referrals reach an asymptote. For a consultant that's doing good work, I'd say that could continue to go up. And at least in my experience of members of the community, a lot of people basically stay within that zone their whole time as an independent. They continue to do good work for their existing network, and then they get referrals, and then those referrals get additional referrals, and it's mostly word of mouth for the whole period. So, um, but I mean, putting it on paper the way you've done lets you have the conversation about it, and I like that. So let's
Yeah.
look at the next one.
Yeah, let me switch to a client example. As I pull this up, I'll give you some context on the client himself. Um, and don't worry about this yet.
All right.
Well, I'll zoom in here. But this client, his name is Mark. He's a fractional general counsel for B2B SaaS companies. And we're B2B SaaS companies need legal support is typically around sales contracts. And so one of the things that he really wanted to get across was that uh, well, he he wanted to talk about the elephant in the room and the fact that nobody likes lawyers and they just gum up the process.
Yeah.
And so the first one that we created was this one. I'll help you. I'll let you soak that in and then describe it, and we can
All
talk about
right.
it.
So the title of this one is the Sales Prevention Department. And on the left, we says, "Ah, yes, legal, where deals go to die." And there's kind of this arc going down and up with a skier on this ramp, and the skier is about to go off the ski ramp directly into the Grim Reaper, basically killing that deal. And on the right, it says, or your lawyer could build momentum rather than kill it. And it shows the skier flying off this ski ramp on an Olympic level kind of jump there. So he's saying that, we are not the sales prevention department. Make it little,
Yeah.
little comedy and kind of making fun of the kind of the stereotype.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. And yeah, this addresses the elephant in the room. It does it in a very memorable way. Like, when's the last time you saw the Grim Reaper pop up in a, a business conversation?
Right.
Um, uh, I think it also, I'll say on this one, and this speaks to the co-creative nature of the sprint. I had this originally, like I was envisioning like the ski jump was my idea, but I was envisioning the ski jump just dead ending into a brick wall.
Ah.
And it was Mark who said, "No, let's have a Grim Reaper, make it really big." So it just kind of like showed his sense of humor and built that into it as well.
Hmm.
But I think one of these like kind of a sign of one of a good intellectual headshot to me is this is it instantly digestible? Is it memorable? Could you draw it from memory a couple hours later after you saw it once? And are you going to remember it? Kind
It
of.
definitely wins in that department. I mean,
Okay, good.
the Grim Reaper is not, it's sort of unexpected, and it definitely is something that you would remember days, weeks later. Like, oh yeah, he's that Grim Reaper guy, right? Yeah.
Right.
No, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first one, and then show me some of the other.
Yeah, maybe we do one more.
All right.
And this one, yeah, why don't you describe this one and I'll give you the backstory after.
All right, yeah. So we have a horizontal axis here where we have on the left hand, so it's a one of these sort of spectrums on the says the difference between slowing deals and closing them. And we have on the left side cover my own ass and other lawyers, and on the right hand side enable the business and a picture of Mark. And it's the risk and incentive spectrum. So he is on the enable the business side of the spectrum. So he's clearly showing I understand your goal is to close deals. Other lawyers slow them down. I speed them up.
Yep. Yeah, and that's precisely the point that we wanted to get across. We spend a lot of time uncovering this insight of like, that I wasn't really aware of, that other lawyers do have a lot of even like there's personal liability exposure if they work through contracts too quickly. Mark it was very clear that, yes, he recognizes that, but his incentive is to make sure that the deals close. It feeds more into also his business model. He's not a lawyer that charges by the hour. He wants to be very clear that he's incentivized to make sure that deals get done, and not, well, as it says, not to cover his own ass and inflate his billable hours. So yeah, this is one. And again, and people can see this on the website when you post them, but you note that these are, very simple and they're meant to be.
Very
White
clean.
white background, lines, icons, arrows, just like very, very, very simple. That's not to mean that the expertise underneath it is, but it's more about how do we distill his main point, the point that he wants to make sure that people walk away with, into something that is instantly digestible. And then with these together, then these start painting a picture of who's on the other end of the line when they make an appointment and call.
Yeah, very simple, clear things. He's not going into 100 reasons why I, make it faster or how I do it. Just clear picture of I help enable it. All right.
Well, and to that point, Will, Mark is someone who he has a newsletter himself. When he reached out to me, he said, "Go and look at my website. Like it's obvious that I have a lot to say, but it's all words, and I'm sure that nobody reads it." He saw a very clear need for something to be able to sh share what he had to say and describe him as a person and as a professional that wasn't text based. So that's what we did for him.
Yeah, this is cool. Let's look at some more.
You want one more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you want to describe this one?
All right. Terrifying title. So the sale was won, the contracting process lost it. Oh no. Right. And then we have a kind of timeline, first meeting, sales, decides to buy, sales contract process, signs deal. And then other lawyers, sales contract process, deals die here. But with Mark, sales, short sales contract process, shrink the sales contract process to close deals faster and increase sales revenue. So again, he's making the point that I'm going to speed up this sales contract process, not trying to give you the 50 reasons of ways he does it, just communicating visually that he's going to reduce that process so that you don't lose the deal once it's already won. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And when his buyer, who's typically a CEO, like a founder CEO or a CFO, I think what their eye is going to be drawn to here is, wait, 50% of our deals die where? It's on our side, it's not on the sales side. It's not dragging feet from the potential customer. We've already gotten to agreement, but we're losing it on the contract. This is where the differentiation with Mark and the fact that he has all these ideas and processes he can put in place to shrink the contract process. That's what will lead them to more revenue,
So how do people
revenue that was
use
already won.
So how do people use these visuals? And we'll put these and some more examples on the website for unbox.com/unleashed. But what are they using to post them on LinkedIn, or are they using them when they send out their newsletter to put it at the top so people get a visual? Like, how are they using these assets?
I've seen it all. I think the most obvious placement is LinkedIn. Visuals work great there.
Yeah.
I think that the key of using these on LinkedIn is to make sure that you're posting it repeatedly. If you just post it once, uh, one, it doesn't reflect the work that we did to get there, but it also, I think we all scroll through LinkedIn so much that how many images do you see that you don't remember who actually put them up? And
Yeah.
so you want to repeat it enough that people attribute this visual, this headshot to you. So that's one. The other piece is, yeah, newsletter, website, wherever you have that kind of option, and that's great. We've been talking about marketing uses and how to pull people in the door. But I think it's also, these are really helpful for even when people get on the phone that haven't seen them. Like this becomes a sales tool, kind of like the ones that I showed you earlier. If clients get on and having questions about what kind of consultant they want to be, I say, let me pull up a framework and maybe that can structure a conversation. And so I share my screen just like I'm doing now. I
Yeah.
let them sit with it and then we structure the conversation that way. So these aren't just marketing assets. These are sales assets as well. And if you with some of the clients, we get into like even more. They're less. When we get into more detailed frameworks, those actually can turn into dual purpose in terms of structuring the actual service that you're selling as well. And so you see some spill into that being a client delivery asset beyond just sales and marketing.
Okay. So not just LinkedIn and so forth, but when you're actually talking live to a client, you can call up this on your screen, and say, help use it to help illustrate and explain what you do and differentiate. It's more memorable. Um,
Well, and just one more thing on that is that
yeah.
it takes a little bit of pressure off the consultant, particularly a new consultant who might have some anxiety about speaking to their expertise or like that there could be a lot of pressure of uh, I finally wanted to talk to this person. I'm so glad they booked a call. Now I have to really show that I know my stuff and let me just impress them. If you have all of that distilled into a very simple visual that can be the common ground for a conversation, then it's not up to you to deliver a spiel that it's probably going to take you a lot longer to say anyway. Might as well just show a visual and then really get down to the meat of the discussion. So that's the other thing that happens here. It's also worth mentioning on the client side, let's not forget that these clients are often in distress when they're reaching out to a consultant, and they'll probably tell you a lot about what's going on in their on their side of the table. Um, and if you're coming from a place as a consultant, if you're just spewing insights at them, trying to show how smart you are, they're probably going to, you can have a rich back and forth, but there's also the risk of overwhelming them with just talking in circles and not being very clear about what a possible next step could be. So that's what these headshots are meant to do, kind of reduce the cognitive load, free up some time within that initial call to actually talk the meat of the discussion, as opposed to trying to get across what you know and why you're the right fit.
All right. Um, so Wes, why don't we just mention it one more time for listeners that want to subscribe to your newsletter, see more examples of this, and potentially work with you, uh, where or learn more about your service, where would you point them online? What's the best starting point?
Best starting point is my website, developmyip.com. IP standing for intellectual property. I hope I showed through this that IP can mean just visuals. It doesn't mean you need to go hire a lawyer or write a book. This can mean just visual assets. So developmyip.com is the best place to look. Right at the top, you'll see a link for the IP Builder Sprint and also the light bulb, which is my Monday to Friday 1 minute email that's where I release all of my frameworks and headshots along with other insights for solo consultants.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Wes, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it.